Good morning and welcome to the programme. It is Friday. We have some fabulous stories coming up on the programme. We're going to have Rory Cowan, him of Mrs Brown's Boys. Please text in any questions that you want, any little comments, and also we want a little poll of your favourite Mrs Brown's Boys scene or programme. So text us in whichever one you think is your favourite and we'll talk to Rory about that. He's going to be on the programme around 11:30 this morning. We're also going to be talking to Georgie Kneisel from Kneisel's Jewellers about Unromancing the Stone. Is the surprise engagement dead? New figures show that a lot more women are deciding that they want to pick their own engagement ring. Let us know what you have to say about this, and also if you have any little stories about your own particular engagement. 083 33 975. You know the number by now. 083 33 975. Text and WhatsApp. Or you can call Audrey on 051 846 123. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us round the block. WR Christmas Appeal Premier League Soccer Quiz next Wednesday night in the Cove Bar on the Dunmore Road. Myself and Matt. We're looking for teams of 4 to raise money for the St Vincent de Paul in the city and county. So it's basically the start. That's the opening kick-off night of the fundraising for St Vincent de Paul in conjunction with WR. Please enter if you want to enter a team. It's €10 a person, €40 a team. That's next Wednesday night. We had Synergy Dance Club on yesterday. Just to let you know, McGrath School of Dancing were on the show in 2002. So that's, we think, the last time a Waterford troupe were on the Late Late Toy Show. Well done and best of luck to everybody in Synergy. Talking to Geraldine, we had her on early in the programme during the week. She got great support from people ringing a messenger regarding the interview that we did with her and also with Shauna. We know the protest is on today regarding the psychiatric unit at the hospital, so we will keep you in touch with that. Also, Gay Byrne's funeral is starting later on this morning, and as we have been saying during the week, deepest commiserations and condolences to his family. John Cummins is going to be on shortly, talking about the budget meetings and the whole issues regarding the finances locally in a little while. Now, yesterday we had Eilish O'Regan on from the Irish Independent health correspondent, and she was talking about the delays for people for testing for the BRCA gene. This is the gene, I suppose, been made famous by Angelina Jolie, getting tested for this gene, and if you find this gene you may have an increased chance of getting ovarian cancer, breast cancer or other types of cancer. So some people have the moral dilemma about whether to get it or not. On foot of this, a woman called us yesterday, texted into the programme. We phoned her yesterday afternoon. I had a chat with her. She's living in West Waterford, and her name is Catherine. Here's the little chat I had with Catherine, and this is a very difficult story to listen to, but very, very important regarding the BRCA gene. I firstly started the interview by asking Catherine, how is she?
I'm very good, and how are you?
Good, thank you, good. You were listening to our piece about the BRCA gene, BRCA gene. What's your own story, Catherine?
Well, my own story is that one of my siblings got cancer. She fought it and came out of it, and it started off with just a lumpectomy, and then she had to have a mastectomy, and then she came out of that, and her consultant advised her to go for a gene test. So they arranged for her to have a gene test in Crumlin Hospital in Dublin.
Okay.
So she went for the gene test. Then she had the job of coming around to all of us when she got the results to let us know that she was positive for the BRCA2 gene, and we were advised to go for the test also.
And sorry, Catherine. Just in case people don't know, what was this positive test for the gene? What does the BRCA gene potentially show or lead to?
The BRCA2 gene, breast cancer in women, a very high chance of getting breast cancer in women, prostate cancer in men.
Okay, so she went for this test and
she was positive for the BRCA2 gene.
So basically, she has this gene. She had this gene in her body, and she then
had to come to all her siblings.
Yeah.
To let them know that she had this gene, which was a hard job for her to do.
Very difficult.
A very brave job also for her to do, to go and to let us know what she didn't know when she got it first, if you can understand what I mean.
Yes.
We were ahead of the posse going on what we knew with her results. So we then went for the test. I went myself, and it didn't cost anything. I heard one of your callers saying, or text messages saying, it cost $2,000 for a test. Our test cost nothing.
Okay.
My siblings got it. My children got it. When I was tested for it, I was tested positive for the BRCA2 gene. So then I was advised to get my children to go and get tested. So they got tested, and they were clear. I thought at first they were telling me lies just to make me feel better, but they weren't. They were clear, so it stops at me. With a few more of my siblings who have it, their children weren't as lucky. They had the BRCA gene, so it doesn't stop with them. It also goes on to their children, or it might not go on to their children. And my main concern is going on what I heard this morning on your show, that I don't think anybody should bury their head in the sand. I was very nervous about going for this test, but I felt I had to do it. My sister was very brave to go and do what she did, first and foremost, to have that test for us and for herself. So I couldn't bury my head in the sand, and I feel anybody who knows that it's in the family should go about it, because if they've children, their children will have to be tested as well, and their children. I was lucky. It stops at me.
What form does the test take? Is it just literally taking a bit of DNA?
Literally, they gave me counselling first, and they just take blood. That is it. But because my sister went for it first, hers took a lot longer for the results, because it's like an encyclopedia. The way I can explain it, show you can go from A to a Z in an encyclopedia. Okay?
Yeah.
And they could be gone up to H, my JK. I may have to go back to B for my sister and go through all that. Well, with us, they didn't have to do that, because they had all the results from her, which helped them with us and was easier for us then to have the test, if you can understand what I'm saying.
And how long was the wait from the time that you had the test until you got the results?
I waited, I think it was 5 weeks.
And
I insisted on getting it by phone call.
You insisted on phone call, did you? I
insisted on it. I didn't want to be travelling up to Dublin again. And I was diagnosed with it.
And sorry, Catherine, when, is it the doctor or the nurse or somebody just rang you and said, you have it, is that it?
The counsellor from Crumlin Hospital rang me to tell me. I asked her to ring me. I said I didn't want to go up. Another one of my siblings had the test done on the same day, and she also had the BRCA gene. So I took everything necessary to stop me from getting it. But unfortunately, I got the breast cancer. I had one tumour. And 4 weeks after being diagnosed, I had a double mastectomy and discovered that there was 3 more tumours. So I then went through chemotherapy. I went through 2 different types of chemotherapy and a Herceptin, which is a new drug that they have. Very hard to get, very expensive, but I got everything possible. I was really brought through the system properly and looked after properly, and very pleased. I then had to go, once all that was over, and have a full hysterectomy. Have your ovaries, your womb, your cervix, the whole lot removed. I had to go and have that done for myself, because the ovaries produce estrogen, which causes the tumours in the BRCA2 gene. If you can understand, or is that complicating?
No, that makes perfect sense, because that's exactly what Eilish O'Regan was saying.
Myself lucky I'm after coming out of it, but if I didn't know what my sibling found out, I would have been none the wiser. So I feel if it's in the family, and if people know that they have it, and they have siblings and children, that they should go and get tested. It's of utmost importance, because I'm fine. I have a sibling that's still fighting, and fighting hard, but doing good. So I feel nobody should bury their head. They should go and get themselves tested if the gene is in the family. You have to have either a parent or a sibling who have gone through it and come out of it to go for that test. We were lucky. I lost my mother to it 6 years ago.
Oh, God, I'm sorry to hear
so
that.
So we think it came from my mother. We're not sure because my mother died of breast cancer. We're not sure, but we think it came from my mother.
You can understand, Catherine, that some people would be worried about having the test.
I can, because I was worried. I was worried that day I went up for the test. I'll never forget it. I was shaking, but I spoke to a counsellor up there who was very good and very reassuring. It was only a prick of a needle and the blood came out and that was it, until I got the phone call. But I was very well looked after and very pleased with the way my treatment went and the way I was treated. Very pleased.
When you got that phone call, I presume you were sitting down.
I was sitting down and my sister was with me. She just happened to be there, one of my sisters. And
what thoughts?
I was stunned. I had to give her the phone. I couldn't take it in. But then it all kind of sunk in and I had to come to terms with it. You know? You might find it hard when I say I didn't mind the cancer because I knew they were going to cure me. I knew in my heart that I was going to be cured. The one thing that bothered me the most was when all my treatment was finished, is where do I go from here? And luckily enough, if you don't mind me saying, I had solace, and solace got me back to where I am today. Happy ending. But I had to go for that test. And I'm a lucky, lucky person. My children don't have it. Hello?
You've been
there?
Yeah. No, I'm stunned by your stoicism, by your strength.
Yeah.
You have
to be.
You've been through so much,
You get
Catherine.
up and get out. You have to. You can't just lie in bed and say, I'm giving up, or that's no way, like. But as I said, I had people who helped me, and my siblings were so good to me. We all rallied around each other, you know. There was a number of us that got the cancer, and we all rallied around each other, and were good to each other and look after each other. And that's why I can only stress, if it's in the family, I mean, to hear somebody say, I wouldn't bother going, I'm better off not knowing what's going to happen. That's silly. That's silly. They could say, I could be walking across the road tomorrow, I could be knocked down. Yeah, you could. So could I.
Yeah.
But I had a chance of finding out. I took that chance. And I'm after coming out on the other side. And I'm thankful. I'm so thankful to my sister for doing that for me. I thank her for all of it.
Yes. So, as you say, the advice is go and get the test if there's any doubt at all.
Only a pinprick. Take a bit of blood out of your vein. That's basically what it was. And they talk to you and explain everything to you. You know? You have to. And do what you can, like, you know. I was unlucky I got the cancer, but lucky that I got out of it.
And I suppose if anybody has any questions about this, talk to the GP first, because one of the reasons we covered the story yesterday was because there's there's waiting lists for the hospital up in Dublin, in one of the hospitals, St James's, and then Crumlin, as you say, you managed to get it done.
We got it. We all got it done free of charge.
Free of charge, yeah.
Free of charge, and we're well looked after. And yes, talk to your GP.
It should be the first port of call. Yeah.
Yes.
How are you?
Talking to your GP.
How are you now?
I'm fine. That's what I can say. I'm fantastic. I get up, I get out, I just carry on, like, you know, and I'm in good health.
Excellent.
I had a double mastectomy, as I told you, and I'm fine.
You've laughed in the face of death.
I kicked its butt.
You did.
If you don't mind me saying that. And
kicked its butt.
I'm happy and delighted to be able to tell you this, and still thank my sister for all she done for us, because without her, we wouldn't have known this.
Yes, and there's still one member of the family, as you say, fighting it. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Well, we wish her the very best. And as you say, great praise for the Solace Centre as well, Catherine.
Great praise for the Solace Centre, because when you come out of treatment, when I came out, I didn't know where to turn. It was like I was in the middle of the ocean in a boat. What direction will I go when I can't see any land? And I was told about Solace, and my God, did they help me. I'm actually in a choir with them now, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Super.
Yeah.
Catherine, listen, thanks for telling your story.
And thank you for listening, giving me time to speak. I just hope people will listen and go to your GP and follow up, and always look after yourself and get yourself checked out.
Get yourself checked out there. Catherine's, it's not her first name, telling her story there from West Waterford. Text in, Damien, you're subject of the BRCA2 gene. Please don't read out my name. 4 brothers, 2 are twins, 3 carried the gene. My mother died at 60. Pure diligence, the only son of one brother having been diagnosed with male breast cancer. He sent for blood tests. They came back positive. He's 5 sisters. 3 of them had the gene too. He had half his chest taken away. His 3 sisters had full hysterectomies, mastectomies, lymph glands. Of another brother, one of his 4 children had it, so she had to have all removed. 3 of those 4 brothers died from cancer. Tests have been done on the children. If affected by these parents, they must be tested by 18. Nightmare personified. Now 083 3333 975. Well done to Catherine. Her family, our family, have had genetic testing. My mother lost her sister to breast cancer. She had her other sister at breast cancer. My own sister had breast cancer, and thankfully is very well now. I have 2 other sisters myself. We've been genetically tested for the gene. I'd agree with Catherine, go and get tested. Damien, I paid €800 in Dublin this year for the genetic testing. It can cost up to €1,500 depending on where it's sent, either Canada or Manchester, and that is from Nora. The 2 Johnnies, they're comedians. They're from a county in the southeast, and they've got a new book out. The 2 Johnnies solve all your problems. We've got 2 books of the 2 Johnnies to give away, and we just want to know, what county are the 2 Johnnies from? Text in the county that the 2 Johnnies are from. We've got 2 books to give away, and we're going to have Rory's book to give away in part 2 of the show as well. John Cummins, we're having you on to talk about housing and housing issues. That's the first thing we asked you to come on and talk about. That BRCA gene story is just horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah, no, look, it's absolutely heartbreaking. My heart goes out to the family and anyone involved, and I suppose the message that has been relayed there is to go and get tested, and it's there's no words for it. It's just
puts everything else into context.
Tough. It does. It puts everything into perspective.
We're going to be talking about engagement rings in a little while, so we don't have an awful lot of time to go through stuff at the minute. I'll ask you about that in a minute, but firstly, the reason we asked you to come on was about housing, because there was an issue that came up at the last council meeting regarding Ballynasia and social housing and affordable housing. Just explain to our listeners, is a social house the old style council house? It
is, Damien, but there's many ways of providing that house. I suppose in years gone by it would have been that the council would have built those, or the state will say state housing programmes. Now there's many ways of delivering them through leasing programmes, through turnkey developments where a private developer builds a social housing or builds an estate and sells the development lock, stock and barrel to the council, or the council can go and tender the project and go through the various stages and develop it. So there's a number of arms of how, and then you also have the approved housing bodies like Respond and Circle and Focus that also provide social housing and fill their tenancies from people that are on the council list.
And what's an affordable house?
So an affordable house then, there's a new affordable scheme that has been developed by the government. It's for the cohort of people that are above the threshold for social housing list, or for the social housing list, but have a difficulty in getting a mortgage essentially for a private house. And they could be your teacher, they could be your doctor, or teacher, or your general lower paid jobs. And I suppose in dealing with people on a daily basis as a councillor, I'm finding more and more people in that category. And I suppose I've been pushing this case for the last 2 years with the council that we need to focus and identify sites for affordable housing. The executive have identified 29 units to go on the Carrickfearish Road. I've asked that the site on the Ballycashin Hill
and a number of others, not just you. Yeah. But I have asked that the site on the Ballycashin Hill would be designated for affordable housing. Unfortunately, the executive didn't go that route. They've applied for, we'll say, funding, stage 2 funding for social housing on the site. Personally, I believe that, that area has one of the highest density of social housing in Waterford, if not the entire southeast region, and we need to put in appropriate scale housing and affordable housing on that site. So are you against social housing?
No, and I knew that you were going to say that. I suppose, like, my record in relation to social housing, like, nobody can question. I would challenge any politician in the last 3 years to say that they've been involved in more delivery of social housing than me here in Waterford. I've been involved in negotiating with developers and the department in relation to turnkey developments at Bounds Court, Carrickfearish, 55 being finished at the Knights Grange. So, like, people are in those. There's families that are off the social housing list and in homes. I'm not opposed to social housing. We've had 100 through the repair and lease scheme, but we have to have appropriate housing in the right location, and it has to be appropriate scale also.
And scale comes into it as well. So, like, this, by you being opposed to this Ballinadisha Stage 2 development, is that right?
The social housing scheme that has been proposed for this site.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there was a vote at council 2 weeks ago in relation to this, and the majority of councillors in the room also voted in favour of having an affordable housing scheme on this site. So it's not John Cummins that's saying this, it's the majority of councillors.
Well, the reasons we're coming back to it is there's been a lot of talk about it since, and there's a lot of, I suppose, explanation into it, because the word on the street is that money has now been lost because of this vote.
No, and like, we have €500,000 approved under the Service Sites Fund for up in Carrickfearish, which is for providing the roads and the footpaths and the lighting in order to facilitate the development of the affordable housing, and we haven't progressed that yet. There's questions that need to be answered in relation to that. Now, I know the executive will say that they want to do it all together, but the mechanism for drawdown is to provide the service site first and then build the houses subsequently. But we're saying that we're not going to proceed with the first phase of it. And I also think...
So do you think the executive are to blame? Slightly?
Well, in terms of that Carrickfearish site, yes, I think it can be progressed on in terms of the service sites element of it. And I do also believe there's another round of the service sites funding, and I do believe that the Ballycashin scheme should also be included under that.
On the budget issues, how difficult a situation are we in?
It is a difficulty. There's no question about it. I suppose we're a little bit unlucky. The timing in terms of this is what has caused the issue. We had a revaluation of rates back in 2014. Ratepayers will recall that. We also had the amalgamation of the City and County Council. And unfortunately, because of both of those and I suppose the issues that pertain to Irish Water, where a decision was made that rates would be levied in full on the utility, in which case we actually got a dividend from that. We got about an additional, $3.5 million into our coffers as a result of that. Then we know what happened with Irish Water, and the decision was made not to levy rates on the utility, and the department put a compensation fund in place in order to pay for that. There was no, it was for that year. There was no, guarantee that it would continue in perpetuity. However, then a decision was made in recent times that they would come back into the rates process, and a whole revaluation of rates was done. The global figure did not change, 60 million for, we'll say, the entire country, or in or around that. However, there has been winners and losers in that, Cork County perhaps have gone up by about 2 million, we've gone down by 3.5 million, Dublin City has gone down by 8 million. So that's where the issue has arisen.
So do the executive have questions to answer about their lack of foresight on this?
Well, I suppose a decision was made back in 2014 on the advice of the CEO and on the advice of the finance director that we should equalise the three rate systems that were operating in Waterford. There was the county, the Dungarvan and the city rates base, and the city was the highest, but obviously the one that had the most significant amount of revenue. So a decision was made to bring it down to the lowest rate in 1 year, which we would have to fund forever. However, we could have made a decision at that time to fund it gradually over a 10-year period, which other local authorities did do. And we certainly wouldn't be in the situation that we're in now with a big hole of 3.3 million if we had have done that.
But you and other councillors, you didn't raise this at the time?
Well, we did raise it at the time, yes, absolutely. And it was said that it would be very cumbersome to operate three different rates bases, and the fact that we were one authority going forward, it was important that we had the same rates base. All valid arguments. However, was it the prudent thing to do? You know, the chief executive, in answering my question on that yesterday down in Dungarvan, you know, he didn't say it was the right decision or the wrong decision. He kind of went around it.
You seem to be implying that it wasn't the right decision. Hindsight's a great thing.
Hindsight is a great thing, absolutely.
Where is it going to leave us? What's going to happen?
Well, obviously,
what's your fear or worries?
Obviously, the council have, said that they're going to have a cross-party delegation to the minister in relation to this to seek additional funding. There's probably going to be a middle ground found there with some additional money, but the council has to bring in a balanced budget. That's the bottom line. And, you know, this is not a new thing. When I was involved in the group that was leading the council over the last 10 years, 2 years ago, we had to find 1.3 million 2 weeks out from a budget. So, you know, it's not a new thing, but the quantum, obviously, is very, very significant.
Texter, do you actually, does John support water rates? Larry?
Well, we all know the decision that was made in relation to water rates. They've been abolished. There is going to be, I suppose, in January an exceptional use charge if there's, but you know they're gone. And you know, but I do support the model of having a single utility that will improve our water network. And we see what's happening up in Leakslip at the moment, and 600,000 people. So we know the investment that's required, and having multiple local authorities looking after water hasn't worked in the past, so having one utility is a positive.
Councillor Joe Kelly, you seem to be implying, blaming the executive, where he's saying basically the cut in our council budget is directly the government. No ifs or buts?
Well, no, because the reality of the situation is the rates for water nationally, that figure has not changed. There was no vote, as was implied by people at the council yesterday. It's just so happens that it has been apportioned differently based on population, and we have been one of those that has been negatively affected, along with 8 other local authorities. But there has been winners on the other side, which makes it more challenging to fight. If everybody was losing, obviously you'd have a very, very strong hand, but there's obviously winners there, so they're not going to be supporting giving additional money to Waterford when they're getting significant extra resources. So it's a reapportioning. It's not that money has been taken away from the global pot.
John Cummins, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Damon.
One last question before we go. Engagement rings.
Well, obviously I got married in July of this year. I proposed to my wife Inga in Florence, and we had I had a token ring, I suppose, to propose, and then we went and purchased our ring. Paul Sullivan made it here in Waterford.
Why did you do that? Were you afraid of picking the ring yourself?
I was definitely afraid of picking it, and it's obviously a significant amount of money, so would like it to be right, and it is, I suppose, forever. So it was nice, but it was nice that it was a surprise also. I think I read that article and they said that people were picking engagement rings before a proposal. I did surprise Inga. I had written to her dad in Slovakia, in Slovak. I got help with it, the translation, and he had written back to me, and probably the most nervous that I was getting the letter, because I didn't know what it had actually said. I had to get it translated for me to know that he was approving of the wedding.
So you formally did asking the father for the daughter's hand in marriage.
Yeah.
Old style, Jane Austen style.
Old style. So and thankfully, look, we had a fantastic few days in July. So
thanks,
Damien.
Now we've got Georgie Kneisel in studios. Morning, Georgie.
Good morning, Damien.
We'll talk to you now in 1 second. Thanks for joining us. Firstly, Damien, the councillor, very indebted. We've a square in Dungarvan that needs a lot of work on it after all the money that's been spent on it in the last 2 years. As I say, Joe Kelly has been on saying that it's the government to blame on this. A question for Councillor Cummins, water rates, talking about there. Damien, there isn't a funding scheme for government for affordable housing, said this person, according to Ivan Grimes, head of the housing development, and affordable housing is the way to go, but there's no funding scheme available. Damien, very depressing to read in News and Star regarding cutbacks and different issues such as that, and people ringing in to support the protest that's taking place with psychiatric nurses this afternoon. Again, send your texts in if you want regarding what county the two Johnnies are from. And we will have a number of books to give away on that. A lot of people saying that they are actually fans. Now, we're going to talk about engagement rings. And as I said, we've got Georgie Kneisel from Kneisel's Jewellers in this city. Georgie, tell us a little bit about engagement rings. What makes a good engagement ring?
Oh, goodness. Well, I suppose it's the ring that the wearer is going to be the most happiest wearing for the rest of her life. There's been a lot of talk years ago, I suppose, when my parents set up initially. Men would have come in, chosen an engagement ring, they would have left with it, they would have surprised the lady, and they might come in and get it sized, and that was the end of it. And 99% of women were delighted with their ring, and we wouldn't have seen them back after that except for a cleaning. But now people, I suppose, are much more educated. They have a huge range and choice on the internet. They all travel a lot more, and they would most likely, I suppose, like to choose their own ring or heavily hint in the direction of the ring that that they would want. The poor men, I tell you, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing.
A study by Weddings Online and Stone Chat Jewellers found that only 20% of women want their partner to choose their engagement ring. Only 20%. Again, the implication is that 80% of women want to choose their own ring.
Yeah.
That's a massive turnaround.
It's huge. It's huge. As well as, like, the designs nowadays are a lot more elaborate. Years ago, you would have had maybe 3 or 4 particular designs, like your solitaire, your 3-stone, your cluster. So the men went in and it was usually in yellow gold, so there wasn't a huge choice. Whereas now the choice is so huge that I suppose the men are worried about getting it wrong. But I suppose the element of surprise is gone in a lot of the cases now. So it's lovely when a man does come in and choose a ring. And if you come in local and you buy it in your hometown, you can choose a ring, and we would always say to people, look, she can come in and swap it, or she can change the metal from yellow gold to white gold or anything, and at least you're leaving with a ring and you are surprising her with it. And I still think it's lovely when a man walks out with a box to surprise someone. It's exciting for us, and they can come in and get it sized, or if she does want to swap it, then she can swap it.
And then obviously at the minute we're talking about different types of couples. We've heterosexual couples traditionally, we've got same-sex couples now. Yeah. Does it change for them, I wonder, in the sense that do you find the same-sex relationships maybe a little bit more, they might be different in how things are chosen, or is it exactly
a little
the
bit?
same?
I think it's not as traditional then as it used to be. Now, we would have always had a lot of same-sex couples, maybe with mum and dad being German and Dutch. Over there, it would have always been a lot more spoken about. A lot of people wore commitment rings in Holland, so maybe we were a little slower.
Commitment rings?
Yeah, for men. They would have got it before they could get legally married over here. So we would have a lot of same-sex couples. Women's tend to come in together. The two ladies would come in and they'd both choose a diamond ring most of the time. And men, it was more wedding rings, I suppose, as nowadays, as opposed to commitment rings, and they would usually come in together. So I don't see a lot in the surprise element there, but they would come in as a couple.
And would you get maybe two, like let's say two women, same-sex relationship, buying an engagement ring each? Or does one give the engagement ring to somebody else?
No, they buy them for each other.
So
that the couple come in, and usually one would choose first and then the other one would choose. So they both get a diamond ring, usually, with ladies. Right. They do.
And with men?
Men, they would come in for wedding rings and they would get one each. So whether they get them designed themselves, men can be a little more flexible, I suppose, because they're only wearing one ring. They're not going to be getting a wedding ring to match an engagement ring. So they can, they're spending all their money, I suppose, and time and effort on one ring. So they would maybe take a little bit longer, but they get them custom made, and there's a lot of different metals now that people go for. So
Joe was texted in, I bought my wife's engagement ring at Knisel's 45 years ago. We chose it together.
I know. And it used to be upstairs, like we still do upstairs now, but we just have sort of one large wedding area. But we would have had about 3 or 4 booths there in a row together. And I remember all the staff that were up there, or when we were little, it was always a big thing to be allowed to go upstairs and watch everybody. Joan Kennedy was there, and Stella Cook, who just passed away a few days ago. And they would have been, but all day Saturday would have been engagement ring couples queuing to go upstairs.
What about when you see a man, let's say, coming into the shop?
He looks petrified usually.
Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Well, it depends. I suppose a lot. We often take them upstairs because even though you think if they met somebody they know, you would think people would be sort of subtle about it. Or if they saw a couple come down from upstairs and you know them, you would think people wouldn't say anything. But, you know, if I had a couple tip to upstairs or a man and they come down and one of their buddies walks into the shop, they'd be like, oh, we saw you sneaking upstairs. It's engagement ring time. So it's never, you know, nobody ever winks and keeps it on the hush hush. So a lot of men do prefer to go upstairs so they don't be seen. And they can choose something then and leave with it quietly without half of Waterford knowing.
There's some texts and comments coming in. We've got a little clip that we want to play, so just stay with us, okay?
Yeah,
don't go anywhere. Now we're talking to Georgie Knisel from Knisel's Jewellery. I know someone who got an engagement ring, says this texter, that cost €10,000. He must be mad to pay that. What's the most expensive ring you've sold?
We've sold? I suppose about maybe 35.
35,000?
They don't come around very often. I think the average in Waterford, I would say, is sort of between 2,000 and 3,000.
2,000 and 3,000.
But they start at anything from 500. So I say to people when they come in, don't get carried away. You know, you've come in with a budget in mind and stick to it. There is a selection of rings for every budget. So stick, because you do get carried away and they see them. And as well as in our lifestyles now, you don't want anything too elaborate that you can't wear every day. If you want to wear your ring every day, you need to go for something a little practical.
Yes.
You know, that can be worn every day.
There's also then marriage proposals. Here is the marriage proposal from When Harry Met Sally.
I love you.
How do you expect me to respond to this?
How about you love me too?
How about I'm leaving?
Doesn't what I said mean anything to you?
I'm sorry, Harry. I know it's New Year's Eve. I know you're feeling lonely, but you just can't show up here, tell me you love me, and expect that to make everything all right. It doesn't work this way.
Well, how does it work?
I don't know, but not this way.
How about this way? I love that you get cold when it's 71 degrees out. I love that it takes you an hour and a half to order a sandwich. I love that you get a little crinkle above your nose when you're looking at me like I'm nuts. I love that after I spend a day with you, I can still smell your perfume on my clothes. And I love that you are the last person I want to talk to before I go to sleep at night. And it's not because I'm lonely, and it's not because it's New Year's Eve. I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
What about going abroad? What about couples that are planning to get married abroad? Or get engaged abroad?
Yeah, well, that's probably most of the men that come in on their own. It's usually because they are planning on doing it on a holiday to go and get engaged. So they come in. Again, we say to them, go for something simple like a solitaire, and if at the end of the day it's not exactly what she wants, she can always change it afterwards. But it is lovely to to fly somewhere, I suppose, and surprise somebody. So a lot of the times what we'd recommend is not to put it in the box in the suitcase. Take it out. We have these little plastic bags and staple it on the inside of your wallet, and that means when the moment arises, it's with you all the time, and you can pop the question then. So, and it's lovely to see couples come back from their holidays, with their rings if they need to get them sized or anything.
Do you ever get, or do you get many people coming back to change a ring? Or does let's say...
I think the men are briefed enough these days. Like, a lot will have the photo on their phone to say, look, this is what she's been looking at on Instagram, or, they've been on your website and this is what they like, and this is her finger size. Like, literally, the women aren't very subtle when it comes to dropping hints.
And what happens if an engagement breaks down, if it ends? Do you take rings back?
We don't.
You don't?
We don't.
Are there places that do?
Yes, yeah. We didn't want to ever become known for second-hand jewellery, so you have to be a little bit careful. A lot of the rings are in great condition, so we would often clean and polish them and re-rhodium plate them and having them looking in their best condition, and then recommend to go somewhere where, they can get sell them.
Because there are some places that sell them, and I know this from personal experience, where a previous engagement I had to, it didn't work out, and to bring a ring back, and went to Dublin, and I got, let's say if the ring cost, I don't know, £1,500, you might get 10% or maybe 20% if you're lucky.
Yeah, Rody Keary's, they take rings as well, and Riley's in Dublin are very good, because they you give them the ring and you put a price on it, and they get 20% or whatever, but they won't sell it below that price for you. So there are places, but we don't see too many of them, which is good.
Joan has texted in, I got my ring in your shop at Crown 51 years ago. It cost £35. We're still going strong, and I still have it.
Oh, it's lovely to hear.
Do you still meet people that...
Oh, all the time. And do you know what's really nice? Like, I had a gentleman from Dubai, and he was coming home with his girlfriend, and he wanted to get engaged here. And his mum had got engaged with us and had the old Kneisel box, and he wanted to. So we did it, via email, and he got a ring, and he came in Christmas Eve to collect it and had the Kneisel box. So for him, it was the... I suppose the personal attachment and the emotion. But we still have, my grandmother would have written every ring into a ledger with a little image of the ring. And we have every diamond ring that's ever passed through the shop still in ledger books with little drawings. So we've had customers come in from 40 years ago, and we can actually pull out the book and we can give them, with what they spent at the time.
How long do they go back?
I think all the way, 1954.
1954.
Yeah.
And those ledgers are...
We still have them,
they're fabulous. That sounds great.
Every little sketch. And my grandmother was very neat and very tidy.
I hope you've copied them in some way, no?
No, but we have them safe. We have them safe. Yeah.
Here's the Pride and Prejudice proposal. Julie loves this one.
If your feelings are still what they were last April, tell me so at once. My affections and wishes have not changed. But one word from you will silence me forever. If... however, your feelings have changed, I would have to tell you. You have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love you. I never wish to be parted from you from this day on.
Matthew McFadden there, Julie says. Going all gooey there now, are we? Damien, my husband and I got engaged in 1980. My ring was purchased in Kneisels. I chose it myself. This is Carmel. Married now for almost 38 years, and of course our wedding rings were purchased in Kneisels too. Over the years I purchased gold bangles, bracelets for our granddaughters too. Very professional staff and so helpful.
Oh, nice. It's lovely to hear. Thank you very much.
Because that's what a lot of it is, the customer service, the follow-on and down through the years.
Yeah, and you can always bring... If you buy your rings online, you don't really have any comeback, really. Whereas if you do get them from us, you can drop in any time to get them checked, any time to get them cleaned. And... there's other options. At least then we know what her style is. So when he comes in for Christmas present, we can say, well, if you go for this, it'll match your engagement ring that you've got. And that's one thing you can't.
And anybody that's out there that's looking at getting engaged over the weekend, the best of luck to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck to them all out there.
Georgie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Damien.